At the end of the 19th century, the whole world agreed that Argentina, which was then known as the Land of Silver, had a golden future ahead of it. In fact, rich like an Argentine was a common phrase at the time, summing up the great wealth the nation had. But today, Argentina is in a state of helpless poverty and staggering debt, which has brought it crashing down from among the top world economies. Today, the whole world simply rolls their eyes at the pathetic condition of the former legend. But how did a country that was once destined for glory become such a mess? Before we go into that, do like this video and subscribe if you haven't. Argentina is one of those countries that has seen a terrible economic crash during the last century. Its transit from wealth to poverty could be summarized in three major stages: boom and development thanks to globalization, monetary stability, and economic liberalization, the period between the wars from 1930 to 1945, and the rise of Peronism, whose legacy has survived since then in one form or another, despite the succession of different dictatorial and democratic regimes. Like other countries, Argentina was integrated into the global economy during the 19th century thanks to the commercial opening, the free movement of capital and monetary stability. During that period, Argentina prospered greatly, attracting a large volume of foreign investment and human capital. Then the 20th century came with more wins for the country. In fact, at the beginning of the 20th century, the country's name was synonymous with wealth, and blessed with extraordinary natural resources, including minerals and a vast array of productive land, Argentina quickly became one of the richest nations on a per capita basis in the world. While wars raged, first in Europe and then across the world, life was still splendid for the Argentine upper class, who built grand villas and factories. They acquired horses and summered in Paris, where they explored the latest fashion. It was still all good, as Argentina's economy was consistently growing by some 5% each year. And beyond having the highest per capita income in the world, the country also had a seemingly endless supply of raw materials and natural resources such as water, gas, and oil. The country also made a fortune exporting meat, grain, and leather to war-torn Europe. Containing all climate zones, the country was also once a breadbasket with ideal conditions for agriculture. And at the end of World War II, the Argentine peso was considered one of the most stable currencies in the world, alongside the British pound and the US dollar. The argument about where it all went wrong is usually politically debated, but the economic data suggests that the country's persistent troubles with inflation started in the mid-1940s with the rise of Juan Domingo Perón to power. As president, Perón drew economic inspiration from Mussolini's fascist Italy and started remaking the economy. His program of nationalizing production, erecting trade barriers, empowering unions, and boosting wages while increasing welfare payments made him a hero among the working class. But his policies were largely paid for by printing money, which led to runaway inflation. Even though Perón's been dead since 1974, his political ghost has continued to haunt Argentina's politics to this day. Inflation has also continued to trail the country, with no political party or leader seemingly able to crush it completely. Interestingly, in the glory days, Argentina had a comparative advantage in agriculture because the country is endowed with a vast amount of highly fertile land. Between 1860 and 1930, exploitation of the rich land strongly pushed economic growth. Soon, about the first 3 decades of the 20th century, Argentina outgrew Canada and Australia in population, total income, and per capita income. And by 1913, Argentina was among the world's 10 wealthiest states per capita. Then, the 1930s came and the Argentine economy deteriorated notably. The single most important factor in this decline has been political instability since 1930, when the military took power, ending 7 decades of civilian constitutional government. In macroeconomic terms, Argentina was one of the most stable and conservative countries until the Great Depression, after which it turned into one of the most unstable. Despite this, up until 1962, the Argentine per capita GDP was higher than that of Austria, Italy, Japan, and of its former colonial master, Spain. Successive governments from the 1930s to the 1970s pursued a strategy of import substitutions to achieve industrial self-sufficiency. But the government's encouragement of industrial growth diverted investments from agricultural production, which fell dramatically. In 1976, the era of import substitution ended, but at the same time, growing government spending, large wage increases, and inefficient production created a chronic inflation that rose through the 1980s. The measures set up during the last dictatorship also contributed to the huge foreign debt by the late 1980s, which became equivalent to 3/4 of the gross national product. When the 1990s came, the government sought a new solution. So they tried to solve the inflation problem by making the peso equal in value to the US dollar and privatizing numerous state-run companies using part of the proceeds to reduce the national debt. However, a sustained recession at the turn of the 21st century led to a default, and the government again devalued the peso. By 2005, the economy had recovered, but the country again defaulted in 2014 and 2020. Argentina's fall no doubt started in the 1980s, when markets collapsed, prices rose, currency depreciated, and wealthier citizens fled to more stable countries. During this debt crisis, the government turned to the central bank for financial assistance, which further led to inflation because of the increasing money in circulation and decreasing interest rate for borrowing. Since this initial problem, the country has been unable to recover. To make matters worse, the government has been implementing programs that it is unable to financially sustain, such as subsidizing healthcare, energy, universities, and public transportation for its citizens, all of which the government can only afford to fund through the printing of more money. Things seem to only get worse for Argentina, with international tensions complicating its economic recovery even more. Now, foreign nations see no other option but to withdraw their financial support because of Argentina's ongoing political and economic challenges. The country's largest default was in 2001, when its government decided to retract close to US $93 billion in loans, causing the nation to lose access to international debt markets. Surprisingly, this happened again in 2018. Unfortunately, when the pandemic hit in 2020, foreign investors were even more hesitant to assist a country with an unstable financial history due to economic declines in countries across the globe. Therefore, in 2021, foreign investment stood at US $4.1 billion, which is 38% lower than the previous year. The national debt now stands at US $382 billion as of September 2022, which amounts to nearly 90% of Argentina's GDP. While Australians are contending with annual price rises of about 5%, in Argentina, prices are doubling each year on average. This is really terrible, as the most unimaginable items have also recorded huge increases in price. For example, the price of ice cream reportedly shot up 100% in a month. The price of alcohol and tobacco have also more than doubled in the past year. While eye-watering inflation is bad news for consumers, business owners are also struggling to keep pace. Years ago, it was bad enough that restaurants had to change the prices on their chalkboard menu once a month, but now it's once or twice a week. Some even have to change prices more frequently, like twice a day or more, to keep up with the wild inflation and avoid losses, because the rising cost of raw ingredients means they need to pass on costs to the customers. Today, about 40% of Argentines are living in poverty, and the economy is fast moving towards recession. And the economic crisis, worsened by a global spike in inflation since the end of the pandemic, has sent Argentina's cost of living to hit 30-year highs. Now, as a new normal, the country's economic problem causes terrifying political unrest ahead of every general election, as Argentinians look for more radical solutions. A century ago, Argentina was framed in the top 10 of richer countries of the world. Today, it is ranked 63 in the world. What a fall from grace. Do you think something can be done to restore Argentina's lost wealth? Let's discuss it in the comments below. Until then, where money matters, see you on the next one. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel.